What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the garage, and as usual, we've got Andrew joining us again for our number one live tuning show in all of existence on the face of the planet and the moon and Mars and every other, maybe even Pluto. I don't know. Is Pluto still a planet, Andrew?
No, the Dwarf Planet, I think.
Even on balls of ice, way out in the middle of nowhere. See, we got some people in here already. We got De La Soul, DMC Bigfoot, who's probably asleep by now. Cameron Pope, Mr. Bull, good to see you again. Cole, Joseph, Cicero, and RK Creations. To start, I'm sure people will start piling in. We started up a little bit earlier. We're just sitting over here talking about the GTO anyway, so I said, why not just go live, catch up, and
I think
want to hear about
lots of
this
people want to
GTO?
hear about it
Yeah.
too. Sure.
Well, as I was telling Andrew, I found out this car has cutouts on it. Put up tomorrow. I stuck my head under the car for the first time after about a week and determined that it has cutouts on it. So somebody had some fun. They don't work. I got to figure out why they don't work. But I was also talking about we got an LSA blower en route for the GTO. Should be here in a couple weeks.
Oh yeah.
And we're going to throw some boost at it and go through all that fun stuff and get to do. I don't know. I was thinking about, and you weigh on this, and I don't know if anybody would be interested in seeing a LS1 style MAF sensor swapped out for an LS7, the card style, and going through the process of setting all that stuff up. You think that'd be worthwhile? I
It'd
was
be
talking
interesting
to
to see. I mean, if you, oh, sorry. I think it'd be definitely interesting to see because I know that has shortcomings. The LS1 MAF.
The
So
only other issue that you were going to run into is that there's just a cap on the airflow that you can measure on those ECMs anyways. So,
right.
if you don't run into the fact that you max out the frequency on those things, you might end up maxing out the airflow calculations on there anyways. What we got going on here? So, what's up going on, Corey, Jason? Thank you for stopping by. Quick question: True do exhaust? Do I run two wide bands? Jason, depending on what you're tuning on. If you're tuning on a factory ECM, there's no reason to because you can't do bank-to-bank tuning on it, so you're fine with one. Excuse me. What up, Suguba Sam, Paul, Mr. Schmidt? Mike's Garage posted a video about the glow shift wideband. Hope it helps out. I'll have to check it out, Mike. I was realizing as I was plugging those widebands into my little gauge pod that goes in the center console or the center little dash portion of the GTO that is going to be a lot of fun trying to get those cables routed down under the dash. Chris, we are always answering questions, brother. That one YouTube guy, which one is that? That one YouTube, what's going on, brother? Yes, Cole, yes, things really escalate around here. There you go. Cameron Pope says he's got a card on his blown C5. And they make harnesses now. So they make harnesses that tie your factory IAT and your 3-wire MAF back into an LS7 style card. And so you can essentially use the IAT and the card all in the same thing. So makes life easy. But other than that, I mean, it's just basically setting up the scaling and retuning for the MAF. Do you have a favorite filter you use for closed loop using stock O2s with long-term fuel trim and short-term fuel trim? Not really. I use just the standard LTFT plus STFT. And then sometimes I might get a little bit froggy even if I do have a wideband on there and add all of them together. The big thing about it is you got to be careful about using a wideband data whenever you've got any kind of short-term or long-term trims on there. DMC Bigfoot's got the turbo in, now to the hot side.
Yeah.
Cameron Pope. Oh, yeah. Well, and that's the other side is if he brings up a good thing. Cameron Pope says the IAT is separate from math on the LS7 card style. You don't have to run the IAT in the card style. You can keep the standard broken out IAT on the third gens if you wanted to. Tuning a Gen 5 Silverado 5.3 getting a stage 5 camshaft, would you recommend me to modify first for the first startup? Chris, go in and lower your cranking VE table to about 80%. That'll get you fired up at least. And Kyle says, does the size Does this cam size affect initial takeoff in a stock car? Definitely can if it's got a lot of overlap, because you're going to lose power down low with it. You know, cams are built either to make power down low or up top for the most part. Factory ones are kind of power across across the entire power band. So Schmidthead says he filters out decel and idle. Well, yeah, you'll want to filter out definitely decel if you're not turning DFCO on. So how are you doing that, Schmidthead? Are you doing that off of just a standard pedal position, or are you using like the rates, you know, the throttle rates?
Slope. Yeah, that's I do that for the wideband data. So because I've got a manual as well, and just through, you know, shifting gears, you don't kind of leave your foot on the accelerator, so you kind of can't try and filter out those sort of just natural, you know, gear shifts and things like that. I guess it's better, you know, if you go for a decent drive, you can kind of afford to lose a bit of data for the overall accuracy of the data.
Well, definitely, and that's why I try to impress upon people, especially whenever it comes to volumetric efficiency or speed density. I generally don't like to see less than about 15 minutes worth of data, because if you go less than that, unless you're really good about hitting every gear and loading every cell up as much as possible, you're going to have giant kind of holes in the data that you're going to have to change. Oh, okay. Hey, Jerry Handsaker changed his name to JMFH. Jerry MF. Yeah, we got you, brother. I think we need a nitrous LSA combo. We'll see. Let's see what we get done with the LSA first before we start throwing squeeze on it. You know me, though. I'm not afraid to do a little nitrous shot, but...
Just would it be right to not have it, right?
Well, I mean, at least you need like a 50 or a 75 shot on there just to have some fun with every once in a while.
Twist your arm.
But you got to get the methanol injection first.
See how much that stock bottom end can take, hey?
Well, that's not what I'm really wanting to do. I got enough torn apart in the garage right now without having to tear apart a LS1. I mean, let's be honest. You don't tear apart an LS1. You just swap in an LS3 or something. Let's see here. First cam tune on Gen 5. Done playing Gen 4 and Gen 3. Just kind of worried about the torque tables, VVE for the cam tuning. Torque tables, pay attention to your timing, Chris, and make adjustments on torque, especially down low, off of kind of your timing, what it's doing. If it's doing some funky stuff, you know, if your timing's low, bump your torque up. If your timing's high, lower your torque. Kind of play it by ear. You can see what the torque calculations are doing by looking at your throttle body and your timing, because you've got two things. You've got fast, which is your spark, and slow, which is your throttle body. And if one of the two are not acting correctly, that's whenever you get an indication that you need to make adjustments to those torque tables. But, big but here, make sure that your airflows are dialed in first, or else you'll be chasing your tail. Yes, James Anderson, nitrous does act like... Nitrous does cool down the intake charge, and then it raises up cylinder pressure, which is the opposite of what we necessarily want.
Extra oxygen as well in there.
Right. Yeah, it's cylinder pressure. It's just additional cylinder pressure, which is fine on naturally aspirated vehicle because it's your dynamic compression ratio is still pretty low compared to boost, but, you know. Always want, yes, ICT car guy, always wanting math. Now, Schmidthead, we got your filter numbers approved, and if that's anybody's wondering what that gobbledygook is, he's running the slope average for throttle position. Yep. Currently, I have a head cam intake LS1 that I've tuned pretty well, installing a Vortec on it, running low boost for now. Tips for initial base tune: lower timer and richer PE. Lower timing for sure. I would look at the PE. If you haven't messed with the PE already, it may be plenty rich. Just get that thing out beyond 0.85, make it richer than 0.85. Start it out 0.8, work back from there as you play with your timing and stuff like that and figure it out. Then all the other steps are just absolutely the same. More content if you have to tear it down. Cole, nobody watches tear down videos. There's people that tear down engines better than I do, so... No worries,
Sorry.
Cameron. No, you're fine, man.
Kids in the background. It's what is it, 8 a.m. So getting ready for school, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we're exactly 12 out right now. Except you're already into Friday, and I've got a long
from the
Friday of
future.
trying to put Typhoons back together.
Yeah, how are you tracking on that?
As I say, I haven't done anything on the Typhoon in a solid week. Maybe more. I don't remember. maybe 2 weeks.
It's hard with new toys.
Well, the intake manifold needs some more buildup on it. It doesn't quite cover the gaskets. I did find out that the Mercruiser 4.3 liter gasket has smaller water jackets, and that's really where the issue's at, is the water jackets. The Mercruiser, which is a boat company around here, I don't know if you guys have Mercruiser down under, but they use a GM engine with a different head and intake combination on them generally. So because of that, the water jacket gaskets are a little bit smaller. I don't know if it's small enough to fit within the area that needs to for the intake manifold to keep it from leaking without having to just goop the hell out of it with RTV. So that's what this week is, big stuff. Then I still got to do the transmission. So
bit of a list.
Yeah, it's. But luckily, Rocky Mountain Race Week's late in June this year, not early in June. So I'm procrastinating. Yeah, Emdo, nothing else up front, man. You'll be perfectly fine. You may see the thing running lean as soon as you fire it up just because it's pushing a little bit of air at idle. But other than that, just do your standard steps and make sure you work out from idle. Kyle, on my single turbo Fox body, should have watched both AFR or Lambda or both? What's the pros and cons? Man, just do Lambda. Learn Lambda. Forget about AFR. Just focus on Lambda. Because if you know Lambda, you're already doing AFR. And you can tune anything. You can tune diesels, you can tune things that run on propane, you can tune E85, gas, Lambda's where it's at. Put a Nick Williams 103 on my 06 GTO. Keep changing parameters according to your videos. Called Scroggy Dickies, and they said to put them back stock, and it worked great. What am I missing here? James Anderson. So that is probably one of the few instances where the Nick Williams 103, something that he did whenever he designed that thing was to change the inlet of the throttle body in a way that the first 15% is supposed to react more like stock before it really starts flowing. And if you know, it's an interesting kind of way of the way that they almost bell-mouthed it. So the lower flow on the 103 Nick Williams units are happy with the stock parameters. Now, some of the crazier stuff out there, like the Solars, where they've got that weird port that's at the bottom edge of it. Whenever that thing opens up and you get an inrush on air, you cannot get away with the stock stuff if you're running one of the tune related ones. Adam, I don't know what your question is. He just says he's running too rich with a 416 stroker, 7070 turbo, 60 millimeter wastegate, 50 millimeter blow off valves. Sounds like a badass setup, whatever he's got it in. Trevor, did you ever tune any GM 8.1 specifically? I've done a couple 8.1s. Process is the same. Yep. Lambda, 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 Fuzzy Moto.
But it almost literally gives you like a raw percentage anyway. So it kind of gives you an idea of what it's running at anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Emdo, what are you taking to Rocky Mountain Race Week? Chris, do I know any classes or lessons for tuning? I need to get my classes fired back up. I would probably look for platform specific if you were to take a lesson. But email me and maybe I'll tell you some to stay away from. I just don't want to do it on the air because I don't like to talk crap on people on live TV. Unless you can't get Terminator and you can't get Lambda. Yeah, I know, Scuba Sam. I think I may have touched on that in the video of why I'm not installing a Terminator in the Typhoon. Drop PE down to 0.850 commanded, but it's dropped down to 8.5 according to Wideband. Adam, if that is the case, your airflow calculations still need to be dialed in. I don't know. Andrew, you want to pick some questions out here and read them, so I'm not the only one talking all the time?
Yeah, all good. I was just reading that about I've dropped the P down to 0.85, but it's dropping down to 8.5 AFR. So I guess, I mean, if Adam could change into Lambda, I guess that might make it easier to relate to that sort of stuff.
Well, he's changed the EQ ratio to 0.8, basically to command 11 AFR, but it's still going too rich. It's a point and a half rich on AFR, but it's just airflow. Most likely your map, if you're, well, and you're probably not running a map on that set, you're going to be running speed density. Your VE table needs work. You're too rich in your VE table. Holly Terminator X, what fluctuation in time is acceptable while idling? LQ4 idle at 13, drop to 8 to 9, then jump back up to 14. RX, that's really dependent on, if you're even running timing correction at idle, which you don't necessarily have to on the Holly Terminator X. But it's going to be more based on whether or not it's going to hold it. The big thing about the Holly Terminator X's that you might run into, RK, is that you may want to turn closed loop off at idle and set your airflow tables manually in idle. That will settle things down, because closed loop on the Terminators are on basically any of the Holly platforms really struggle at low airflows. LS3 swap Firebird running on stock ECU when set to dynamic airflow to 400 RPM. Car idle's awesome, but does not respond properly to throttle. Backfire to the intake. That's interesting.
I assume that's disabled.
Well,
dynamic airflow to 400, so if only.
Whenever I set the dynamic airflow to 8,000, the car picks up throttle perfect, except for cranking and coming to a stop. Dies instantly and struggles to run. Well, essentially, when you're setting dynamic airflow up to 8,000, you're on speed density. Allergy, do you still have the mass airflow on there?
Yeah, he does say a bit further down.
Yeah, somebody told me to change the cylinder volume and add 30% to the entire map table. I don't know that I would necessarily go off and just do that. Oh, a Dodge Stealth, sweet.
Had a weird issue this week. My trims went really rich, like 11%, and changed the MAF to adjust, and it went 5% lean. Went back to the original MAF that I had in and leveled out. Thoughts? As in the original MAF table?
Right.
Temperature compensation? It's hard to
well, you know, the mass airflow, it shouldn't have been that much of a swing, since temperature is going to affect your actual mass. That's interesting. Schmidhead, I would probably split out your trims to left and right bank and see if the two are following each other, or whether or not you've got one bank that's skewing off. Maybe you have, it could be an indication that an O2 sensor is going bad. What else we got? What else we got? 2008 GMC Sierra 408 stroker from Blueprint, ordered an AFR 500, but in order for CAN bus, can still use it with VCM. Yeah, you'll have to get the ProLink Vet of War, because your only option is going to be analog output on that one. That's the Bollinger that he's talking about. Awesome, perfect. So when speed density tuning in a manual, decel fuel cutoff disabled, we still want to ignore shift and decel data. Correct. My car runs a lot better on MAF only or with both on. James Anderson, literally, man, go back and watch the first 5 minutes of this video where that's all we talked about. Was Andrew talked about setting up his charts, and if you go back to the beginning of the chat, Schmidt had posted in the chat the slope calculation for throttle position to filter out transient throttle for basically on manuals. This is a good question. Can you explain what the prediction coefficients tables does on a Gen 4 under dynamic airflow? Tyler, so if you look at your virtual volumetric efficiency, That table does not exist in real life, doesn't exist anywhere as far as the ECU is concerned. It's completely generated off of the coefficient values. And so the coefficient values are basically a bunch of numbers that are then applied into some very advanced math formulas. Essentially, what's that?
Quadratic equations?
Yeah, quadratic. Yeah, basically quadratic equation. It's polynomial math is what it boils down to.
That's right.
And because of that, it allows you to take a set of numbers, and all of those numbers in the different menus there, they take certain ones from each one based on the running conditions of the engine. And then those numbers get plugged into that equation, then they create a volumetric efficiency curve, which whenever we look at the VE table are broken into the zones. Essentially all those zones are just lined up, and it's all of those individual datas, and we make changes to the zone, and it changes the root number that is used to calculate those curves. So that's what all of those coefficients are. Yeah, Vetawar, you should be able to bring it in the ProLink. Just be aware on the Ballingers, they're very temperamental and they have a tendency to skew analog data. Try and get the Ballinger and the ProLink on the same ground wire. Joe Culpepper had any experience with Max ECU. Think about going that route on an odd engine, want turbo and tune. Odd mean trigger count. Yep. Use Max ECU on my buddy Justin's Hayabusa. And I love those platforms. I love those ECUs. I keep on saying that I'm going to put it on something one of these days. I just never get around to it. What up, WS6? You take one, Andrew. Sweating. I got to turn the fan on.
Mr. Springer said, oh yeah, change my O2 left to right versus airflow switching voltage to 0.45. 450 millivolts, and now my wideband has a larger swing rich lean. Is that to be expected?
Schmidt, did you change your switching voltage or did you change your max rich lean voltages? Because there's two different things.
Yeah, so I was just trying to the min and max rich lean or the actual switching voltage.
Because your switching voltage essentially should be your target that thing considers where it needs to oscillate out whenever it averages your millivolts to determine if it's around stoic. But you can adjust out the max rich lean, and that can cause it to swing further or make fuel adjustments whenever it swings outside that range. So if it's set to 600, 300 millivolts, it's only making fuel adjustments whenever it's in between 600 and 300 millivolts, and it's averaging the numbers that are between those two. And if you blow that out to like 100, 900 millivolts, it gives it more range that can take data for averaging. So just be aware of that. Jason Kimball says, with the True Dual setup that he's talking about, do I replace the narrowband O2 with wideband, then remove the wideband and replace the narrowband for driving? That's one way you can do it. Definitely.
That's what I've done on mine. So I've still got the stock narrowband in one side of the extractors, and then yeah, I've just swapped out one of them for the wideband and things like that.
I'll be anxious to see how these simulators work with these new widebands and whether or not it's worth even messing with. I like the idea of being able to use a factory bung and still run closed loop with a wideband in there.
Yeah, that's what I'm certainly interested in seeing as well, because I guess I haven't actually made the transition back to closed loop, because obviously, you know, yeah, I'd have to take the wideband out. You know, I haven't got a bung welded in or anything like that. So it's just running open loop at the moment.
Well, it's hard to A/B team if you don't have a wideband.
Exactly. So I mean, that's what I did. Yeah. So I'm just working on a bit of a lean spike on kind of like D-cell, but in a manual, really light throttle as well. It's kind of in the same range. So yeah, just trying to, you know, maybe it's a bit of a perfectionist, but
yes,
it's definitely, that drivability is key, right? And, you know, no one's probably going to take it as much time, or I'm sure they would if you paid them, but than what you would actually do yourself. So that's why I kind of, you know, love the DIY.
Oh, that's a good question. Cameron Pope here has, and I mean, weigh in on this. Innovate DLG1, would you log both wideband sensors and average or just pull from one sensor for logging? What up, Hillary? I see you over there. I'm not sure. I would probably actually use one, but I would set up some math to look at the two and see how often they're deviating to get kind of a deviation idea. But I don't know that I would necessarily take both and average them. You could. It's not going to hurt anything. Oh, Allergy comes back and he says, I'm running an LS3 card math. Shall I add 30% to the math? Don't just add 30% to the math calibration. Calibrate it properly. If the thing will fire up and idle, even if it won't idle, capture data and calibrate the math properly. You can add to it if you think that that's going to help. 30% is a huge jump, though. You don't want to completely overshoot. You could be off 12% and be having some of the issues that you're talking about. You're throwing 30, now you're 18% rich. So don't overshoot it.
It should know anyway. So I mean, obviously the math calibration, it still knows how much air is going in the engine. You might just be, if you've increased the capacity or something like that, it'll just think that, you know, it'll just move higher up in the math table, I guess. It'll still know that's the same amount of air as long as you haven't changed any of the intake tract.
Well, I'm guessing this is the turbo setup, so I'm guessing the intake ducting is not the same size.
Okay, right. Yeah, I was going to say, and then obviously, yeah, you do need to update the cylinder volume, obviously, if you've increased the capacity. So, and then the computer will, you know, look at the airflow and, you know, give it more fuel, obviously, because it knows the cylinder volume.
Jason Kimball says, is there a stock ECU that will allow running 2 wideband sensors for everyday driving? Not in closed loop unless it came with 2 wideband sensors from the factory, but stick around, Jason, because we're going to be doing exactly that on the GTO by using the 0 to 1 volt narrowband simulators in the widebands to see if we can run closed loop reliably. What is this? Hold on, what's James Anderson saying? That check your river fuel line, return fuel line at the rail and the BCM harness behind the glove box. Rubber fuel line. Well, I will definitely be checking the rubber fuel line whenever I pull the intake manifold off to put that blower on. But elaborate on the BCM harness behind the glove box.
Must be a common problem, I guess.
You would know. You're from where they were made.
We must have adopted oh, she'll be right.
It's probably that American rubber that they put on the fuel rail over here.
Yeah.
It's not a 5 liter, right? So it's the 5, you know, if it were still the 5 liter, I'm sure it would be fine.
The old 5 liter. They do sound good.
Do you trust CX Racing or any other budget-friendly wastegate or blow-off valves? When it comes to wastegates, no. Bad wastegates equal blown motors. Blow-off valves you can survive if it doesn't open up.
You definitely want to vent that boost.
Yeah. Thanks, Trevor. I appreciate it, man. Oh, my goodness. We got a visitor.
Almost time for school, isn't it?
Yeah.
You see yourself on the screen.
See what else we got here. Oh, man. It's almost time for me to go to bed because I'm getting old.
That's just a number.
Yeah, I know. Well, it keeps on going up, and I don't want it to anymore. Sure thing, Ernesto. BCM harness gets rubbed off from the metal bracket since the dash is flipped for the states. Bunch of funky electrical stuff happens can fry the PCM. Good to know, James. Thanks for the heads up. There we go. Jerry says, I don't age, I level up.
Hello, Mr. Smithhead. OCD and tuning don't mix. Tell me about it.
Oh, here's a good one. Redline says he finished HP Academy this week. Let us know what you thought of it. And if anybody else is interested in High Performance Academy, make sure and check my description and use my discount code to save some money. I think I got should have the $75 discount code out everywhere. But if not, go look at some of my newer videos. Do you know of any steps to tune torque tables without a dyno horsepower torque numbers? without, yeah, I mean, I talked about this a little bit earlier, Redline. Basically, you can look at your throttle position and your spark numbers and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to. And if they're not, that's an indication that your torque tables are not correct. But don't get carried away, because it's way too easy to try and blast those things out. And then don't get caught up on the torque readings themselves. So but also look at things like your delivered engine torque versus your commanded.
I was going to say log those.
Yeah, log those and make sure that design. You want your immediate and predicted engine torque to just be ahead of your delivered engine torque all the time. Essentially, that means that the ECU is requesting this much amount of torque and the engine is making just a little bit less than that, trying to catch that number. That's the main idea behind it.
Kyle, on those Gen 5 platforms, I haven't actually, obviously I'm Gen 4. In terms of the MBT table, is that relevant in that? Is that what the computer uses to judge of how much torque that timing will give it?
That's a good question. I'm not sure on the Gen 5s whether or not it really ever references the MBT table, or if it just uses your base high octane table with the modifiers as your maximum, and then it may cap at the MBT. But as far as the virtual torque's considered, it's going to be looking at that base timing. But with you get into the Gen 5s, there's about 30 different modifiers. And so it can be a little bit painful to try and figure out what is doing what. Log all of your timing parameters. There should be at least 8 whenever you're logging it to make sure that you're getting a correct total output. Yeah, no throwing up in this GTO. No Pro Charger for the GTO. We're going with an LSA blower in it. Ryan, late to the party. I'm suspecting a failing fuel pump, but have you ever run progressively worsening lean condition under wide open throttle? Doesn't seem to make a difference how much fuel I add. I think it might be a fuel pump. Excuse me. Very much probably on the right track that you're losing fuel pressure. If you have an aftermarket fuel pressure regulator, check your fuel pressure regulator, make sure it's not leaking by and that you're not losing fuel pressure. But it sounds like a pressure or a pump issue to me. Oh, here we go. When dialing in MAF, I keep getting lean spikes and surging at low RPM partial throttle. Anything low RPM, MDO, man, look at your VE table. Because you're probably doing enough, even in the low stuff, to lean the dynamic fuel over towards the volumetric efficiency table more. Or the SD table in that case. Do you have any issues whenever you're in SD mode?
All right, guys. I got to go. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll see you next week, Andrew.
Thanks, guys.
Let me see. I don't even know how to get rid of you. Oh, yeah, I do. I think I can just click this button and hide you.
I'll press the button this end, eh? Yeah.
Okay, later on. Yeah, I agree. Oh, did I mute myself? Oh, no, it's because I took off my other thing. Sorry, that freaked me out for a second. I couldn't hear myself talking anymore, but you guys can still hear me. What did I miss? Here we go. I got so so discombobulated. It is 8:27, so it's about time to wrap it up anyways, but Ryan, I would just if you can hook a Mighty Vac up to the pressure regulator or something like that and test it and run it through vacuum and pressure and make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to, because I wouldn't be so quick to jump to the fuel pump. But the other thing that you could check, Ryan, is make sure that this thing's been dialed in the past, so it can't be. It's got to be something mechanical that started happening recently. Yeah, whenever MDO, you can't ever just run MAF only on these things. They even when you're in MAF only, they're going to be referencing the VE table. We can go SD only because we can fault the MAF out or unplug it, but the VE table always has to be there in the background. And so in transient, low speed stuff like that, low RPMs, the dynamic is going to lean heavier on the VE table than it would normally. Yeah, Turbo Smart's good. Tyler Selby, yes, we will cover real-time tuning with the GTO. Both MAF real-time tuning and SD real-time tuning, which we will probably use the SD 2-bar real-time tuning OS with the LSA setup. Oh, Jason N, thank you. You just in time to get a nitrous purge in here before we shut it down. Says, really looking for the next episode on the Innovate MTX gauge. Would really appreciate it. How to use the serial input on HP tuners. Yes, I will go through that specifically. Tuning is addicting. Tuning is addicting. Yes, ICT card guy. You are correct. Boost District. Boost Destruct. Did you purposely call it Boost Destruct? There's Jace's nitrous purge. How to move it. Yeah, Ryan. If it's an Amazon regulator, I'd definitely be careful. Do mods, not drugs. Okay, everybody. It's 8:30. Let's wrap it up. Oh, DMC Bigfoot, you become a YouTube member. I think it's $2 a month. If you go to my main page, you can join, and you get the green highlight, and you can change the logo. You start with the wrench, and then after a month, you get the goat head. It's just a little way of kickback money towards me to pay for my addiction of buying stuff. So, listen, so I'm going to try and get some videos done this weekend. I got Typhoon stuff to do that you guys don't really care about, like just mechanically turning wrenches and stuff like that. Jerry, email me again, man. I think I missed your email, but hit me up again, please. But we're going to try and get the widebands also installed on the GTO. There's no telling. That's next on the GTO is getting the widebands installed and then doing some playing around with some stock tune stuff and just having some fun there. And then hopefully in the next 2 weeks, the Typhoon will be ready to start doing the Fuel Tech install, and then we'll start going through kind of the initial setup and tuning on the Fuel Tech stuff. So listen, you guys know the drill. Thanks for stopping by the garage. ABT, always be tuned, and we'll see you guys next weekend.